Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to stop sharing. Hopefully I'm back now. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to this online event to celebrate the launch of my new book, Fashion Fictions. Here is a real hard copy, an actual hard copy. It's in hardback. It's the posh one that the publisher sent me. So the book is Fashion Fictions, Imagining Sustainable Worlds. So it's available as a hard copy book, but I'm very pleased that it's also available as an open access ebook. So anybody anywhere can download it and read it for free. So Sally, I think, is going to stick the link in the chat in case anybody hasn't got to that bit yet. And also, if anybody would like a hard copy, Bloomsbury, the publisher, have given me a discount code for 20% off. So I think Sally will kindly also stick that in case it's useful to you. Okay, so the plan for the session, obviously it would be nice to get together in person, but it's also nice to get together online because it means that we have all of these people in different places together and we can get together in this way. So the plan is to talk about the book and the project behind it. I'll talk a bit as contributions from other people who are here on the call today, and I'll record for the first hour or so in order to then put it up on YouTube for people who can't come along today. And then the last bit can be a bit more informal. I think the first bit will also be fairly informal, but a bit more informal, and we can open up to comments, questions, chat, whatever we want to do. So I will start by telling you a bit about Fashion Fictions, the project. So this project really invites people to imagine fictional parallel worlds in which people live differently with their clothes. It was motivated by me working in fashion and sustainability for a long time, and my long-standing frustration at how limited the discourse can be and often is, and my experiences of, I guess, trying to flag up and discuss kind of underlying problems, and when trying to do that, often being kind of this concern or this desire being dismissed as kind of unrealistic or naive. So I thought, moving on from feeling frustrated about that, maybe I could sort of lean into that that instinct and actually actively try to create a space where we can actively push the boundaries of the fashion and sustainability kind of conversation, and really a kind of safe space for playfully and humorously exploring the fashion systems that we actually wish for. So I designed the project as a kind of structure that's open to anyone, anywhere to take part in. The project is structured in 3 stages, but these are 3 stages that run concurrently, so anybody can activate any of the stages at any time. So at stage 1, we write short written fictions that each describe a fictional parallel world. In stage 2, usually a different person or group of people will come along and pick up one of the fictions that was written at stage 1 and think themselves into that world, adapt it, reinvent it, make it their own, and then imagine that they've stepped through a portal to the parallel world and either taken a photograph or made a video or picked something up and brought it back to show us what life is like there. So they're creating a visual or material prototype of a thing from that world. And then at stage 3, we find ways to enact the worlds and bring them to life in a physical kind of embodied way. So we've done that in lots of different ways. Other key things, I guess, about the structure of the project is that we're speculating, I call it kind of speculating sideways. We speculate sideways into parallel presents, so parallel worlds where it's also 2025, rather than futures in the real world, which is usually, I would say, more commonly kind of the approach used in speculative work of this type. We are envisioning positive worlds, so a kind of systems that we would like to experience. And we try to pitch them in an area where the worlds are physically possible, so they don't break the laws of physics, chemistry, biology, but they push beyond what feels plausible to wherever we are kind of sitting at the point that we're creating and speculating. So I started the project in 2020. It was just before lockdown, like February 2020. I ran a first pilot workshop. So I wrote the first 5 fictions, ran this kind of first, had a go at running a prototyping workshop, and that led into a pilot enactment. Around the same time, a couple of universities ran the first fashion fictions projects with their students, and it's grown from there. So over the past, so I guess nearly 6 years, we tried to keep track of how many people have taken part, which is always a challenge because wonderfully kind of more things take place than we can quite keep track of. But we know that over 6,000 people have taken part in fashion fictions activities, more than 150 activities run by more than 80 organisations spanning 6 continents of the world, which is just staggering. And the success of the project is down to all of those people taking part. So there would be nothing if it was just me sitting at my desk trying to imagine stuff. So there have been so many people involved, far too many to thank. So I will have to do a kind of a blanket thank you to all of those people in so many places who have supported the project and participated in it. I will thank the funders. So I had funding from the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the UK and from my university, Nottingham Trent University, that enabled me to develop the project in different ways. The funding from the AHRC in particular was a fellowship where I was able to really kind of step up the project and run 4 prototyping workshops and 4 enactments as research activities, where I was not only seeing what came out of the process, but I was able to study the conversations and the debates and kind of the development process that was happening along the way. And that generated a huge amount of data that has formed a really important kind of foundation of the book. And I need to give a shout out to Matilda Aspinall, who was the research fellow who worked with me during that period of the fellowship, helping me to run the workshops and organise and analyse all of that data. So yeah, the analysis of that stuff combined with all of the stage 1 fictions that have been submitted and displayed on the website and other work that's been generated and kind of submitted and shared with me, all of that stuff. There was a mountain of great stuff to draw on and feed into the book. So if we have a quick look at the book now, let me remember how to work the computer. Let's come back to here. So here is the book. And I guess something I want to flag up as a important feature is there's not just an index in this book, there is also a world index, because there are so many of the fictions that have been created by participants that I managed to cram in and kind of draw on and integrate into the narrative. So this is only a selection of them. It extends over, I think, 5 pages, this world index. And the reviewers of the draft book raised some concerns about people getting a bit lost between all these worlds. And I was quite worried about what I kept thinking of as like world whiplash, when you're kind of lurching from one world to another. So I thought the world index might help with navigating all of that. So kind of moving on, here's the contents. Very satisfying to see the contents page for your own book. So the first 2 chapters focus on the thinking behind the project and the 3-stage methodology that I've just outlined really briefly. So kind of going further into what I see as the role of imagination and speculation and the ways that I've kind of embedded that in the project. And then the heart of the book is these 4 chapters that explore key themes that I identified across a whole range of different fictional worlds, prototypes and enactments. And it was really fascinating to see how certain ideas kind of came up again and again across activities in very different places involving very different people. So each chapter is based on specific worlds and the participants' experiences of developing and exploring those worlds. And what I tried to do was allow the participants' ideas to lead me, kind of use them as a guide to look for and find kind of theoretical insights that could help me to make sense of the ideas that were coming up, and find different ways of looking at the questions that those ideas throw up. So to kind of go through the chapters quickly, the first one, chapter 3 on stories and language, is looking at the role of stories and language in real world context and in the fictions created for the project. And one area of focus here is the stage 3 kind of activity of enacting the worlds and bringing them to life. So trying to highlight the value of embodying and performing stories and blending reality and fiction, which is just something that I find endlessly fascinating. Chapter 4 turns to the interconnected themes of nature and spirituality. So I found myself delving into the complex relationship between fashion and nature, the emergence of hybrid human and non-human communities, and themes of decomposition and humbleness. I went in some really beautifully wild places with that chapter. Chapter 5, I kind of draw on the idea of community, which came up in the previous chapter, but kind of extend that into a consideration of place and togetherness. So looking at the locations, places, celebrations, rituals, and dynamics of fashion, taking in ideas like local distinctiveness, connection, and solidarity. And then chapter 6 discusses the organisation of fashion systems at various scales, from specific initiatives to the role of the state in shaping behaviour through policy and legal interventions. And within that, I found myself looking at the tension between restriction and self-expression, such interesting conversations that came up in these kind of activities, and thinking about the need for limits and adaptation in an uncertain world. So I'm going to now kind of pause telling you about the contents of the book to give a shout out for the illustrations. So I was so happy to be able to commission my friend and colleague Helen Merrin to create the illustrations for the book, to head up each chapter and help to illustrate the ideas in the opening and closing chapters. So I know Helen's here. If you want to say hello, Helen.
Hello, Amy. Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay. I'm always struggling to work my own computer.
Thanks.
So they're so wonderful, Helen, and I know that people really love them. I've had so many positive comments from people. I don't know if you want to say a few words about the process of creating them or anything, any reflections?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, firstly, it's so lovely and touching to be invited, and kind of exciting because it was somebody from the fashion department, and I love drawing clothes and I love drawing people, and people wear clothes, and I thought, yippee, I can draw kind of fashion illustrations. That's right up my street. And then Amy, I think you have a really good helping of little grey cells in your head, and then there's an extra helping. And at times when you first started to describe the project to me, I felt like a sock puppet trying to understand a PhD, and it felt it felt like the most incredible woven tapestry that got bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of the worlds that everybody invented provided so many opportunities for image making. And I was scribbling and scribbling and scribbling. So many thoughts. It felt like this project could run and run forever. And I was looking back at my sketchbooks yesterday, and I saw a quote that said, "The end is in sight. I just don't know how to get there." And I think that maybe all great creative projects have an end that's never quite finished. and the ways to get there are so many. And it feels like this project and all the incredible worlds is the most self-perpetuating tapestry of a project. And so, yeah, I found myself having to get excited about drawing recycling bins and all sorts of other things. So you asked me for a real world image and a fictional world image to be integrated or layered.
Yeah,
And
I'll just go back through the ones that I just showed, because that's the case in all of these kind of the core chapter headers. We get the sort of, a sense of that manifestation of that thing in the real world, and then the fictional world kind of laid over the top, don't we?
Yeah, so the air travel and the garments traveling miles around the world to fashion weeks. And then I think it was World 17 that was enthusiastic embrace of sewing by young men. And I just like the idea of, I think it said something about retro sportswear, and I just like the idea of the vapor trails on a perpetual cycle of the plane becoming the stripes on sportswear. And all of the images are actually cut from cardboard. I have a very round the houses process, which is cutting into cardboard, printing in black. So I don't know if you can see, there's the mushroom girl and the lorry. Yes, so all printed off cardboard, hand cut or laser cut. So the idea of greenwashing, the tag underneath, and then I think that's World 131, which is about people personalizing their clothes with mantras and ideas and thoughts and feelings. And so just thinking about potential embroidery stitches that, and not really, and a kind of overture, a poetic overture that doesn't really make sense, but just suggests kind of treasuring garments. And then this one, the government issue uniform that was personalized with materials found in nature to on top of the functional base of the uniform that the government issued. And yeah, and then getting excited about the idea of a high street shop that was just the same as every other high street shop. So just coming up with a name called Ditto Kit, and just the idea of that perpetual cycle of spending, filling your rail, scanning a barcode, taking it to recycling, buying some more. So yeah, just trying to integrate the two worlds. But there are many, many more potential images in this project. It's huge, but thank you so much. And the one on the front cover, just each of your
So this is chapter 2 and chapter 7, which I mean, I just love those people dreaming together. Oh, yeah, it's glorious. But yes, let's just finish with the one that ends up, how you managed to cram in all of those worlds into one wonderful image, Helen. It's just genius.
Well,
you managed to boil down so many worlds into really concise words. It's amazing.
You're very kind, Amy. I think each of the worlds that you described sort of had a potential slogan or call to arms. And I just like the idea of this never-ending origami coat that kind of had all of the slogans on. And yeah, well, just tried my best. Thank you so much, Amy. It was a big year of our lives. Well, a lot more for you, but yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Helen. It's great to hear you reflecting on that. Thank you. Right, I'm going to stop sharing. And I think I would like to hand over to my friend and colleague, Kate Fletcher. So Kate is Professor of Sustainability Design and Fashion at Manchester School of Art and Adjunct Professor at Oslo Metropolitan University. A pioneer in the sphere of fashion and sustainability, and we do go back a long way, don't we, Kate? It was Kate's work that first got me interested in design and sustainability 23 years ago. Maybe we can have a party for the 25-year anniversary, Kate. And I know that countless people around the world can say the same. So a long-term source of inspiration. And I invited Kate to come along and contribute and to say a few words to kind of set the book in a wider context. So Kate, over to you.
Thank you, Amy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this amazing launch of an even more amazing book and project. It is a pleasure to be with you today. I'm just going to speak just for a few minutes, and I guess what I did this morning when I started out thinking, oh, what will I say? I was thinking about the almost 35 years that I've been working in this field and about all of the different waves of interest and action that have taken place in the field of fashion and sustainability in this time. And I think the truth of it is that each one of these waves, when it comes, breaks on a different part of the shore. And it brings with it different questions, different ideas, different practices. And over the years, these waves have brought new features to bear. Some of them have brought good data. Some are about technical improvements. Some are political maneuverings. Others are all about misdirection. There's green marketing, there's consumer critique, there's a whole slew of different things. Generally speaking, I think that most of these features that have come in each of the waves that have broken over the last 30 plus years are all part of a technocratic agenda which tries to refine the offer of the fashion and textile sector through incremental type of change. This is a sort of an improvement, often product by product, thinking in small sorts of scales about what to do. And by and large, that technocratic agenda is still the dominant approach today. I also recently, just in the summer, read this book from 1965. It was written by a German guy called Thomas Schwenk, and it was about waves and flowing water. And one of the amazing things, there was so much to learn in there, but one of the most amazing things that I learned is that in the sea, waves largely travel across the surface, across the top of the water, and they do very little to displace the water underneath. So what we see in this case is that the wave is shape, but actually very little movement. In other places, like in a river or a stream, for instance, there are waves that form, for instance, behind rocks or other things. These are standing waves. And these standing waves, they look like they're stationary, but actually it's a continuous flow of water through that wave. I guess the point that I'm making is that with waves, everything isn't as it always seems. And I guess that perhaps the bigger picture is that in the more than 30 years of in this space, what we see is that certainly the field is bigger now than it has ever been before. There's more people, more projects, more books, all of which is fabulous. But in this time, there has been almost little, very little substantive change. We're pretty much in the same space as we were all those years ago. And yet, I think that was the case until very recently. And then very recently, there has been a real sense that things are beginning to shift. And some of these most exciting places are perhaps around the degrowth space. I think that's really important, around decolonizing the fashion system and about really beginning to embrace plural ideas and engagements, different sorts of power relations. These sorts of things, I think, are the beginning of really substantive change. And in that space, of course, is the fabulous project Fashion Fictions, which is really beginning to push things in a different way than this agenda that we've seen that has dominated up to this point. I think what fashion fictions does for me is something fabulous between these different phases that Amy was describing. So the writing of the world, or the world making part, and then the dressing of the world, the trying it on, and then the trying it out. That bit too is all absolutely fabulous. So this is a brilliant project. And it was, of course, crowdsourced, which makes it all our brilliant work, obviously led extremely ably and brilliantly by Amy. But of course, it's been materialized and lived, and it brings forward other ways of dressing, which I think is the beginning of a process of change. Just as I close, I just want to say that often when I'm writing down the word fast fashion, I don't write it down longhand, I just use the initials FF. Until today, when I discovered that I was reclaiming FF, it is now fashion fictions. So does that mean that fast fashion has now departed the scene? Maybe.
Wonderful. Thank
Over
you,
to
Kate.
you, Amy.
Thank you. Okay, that was wonderful. Thank you for your kind words. And now I'm going to again hand over to some other guests. So I'm pleased to have some some fashion fictions participants here to speak about their experiences. And so we're going to start with Jade, Julie, and Kate. And I have invited them to come along and describe their participation in the project and to share a memorable moment or reflection with us. So, Jade, are you ready to take the mic and tell us something about your experiences of fashion fictions?
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. So during the fashion fictions projects, I have created worlds. I visited worlds just for a day and brought back souvenirs, and I've travelled to worlds and lived there for a few months at a time. So just like any travel, I feel like it was very exciting to get out of how I've normally lived day to day and try different ways of being. At times I felt unsure of how to behave, or I felt unsure or nervous. Some memorable moments include a holiday romance with a dress that I didn't meet for several weeks whilst it was posted around the world. And you know, what happened in Mushroom World stays in Mushroom World, and it's just been a pleasure to see what could be. I think that's something I really like about travel, is it takes you outside of your culture and makes you realize that things don't have to be a certain way and that there are other ways to be.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Jade. Fabulous. Okay, Julie, I think we're going to you next.
Hi, everyone. Like Jade, I've had a brilliant time traveling all these different worlds. I've contributed one about older people sort of running the fashion system because of their knowledge of charity shops and mending. And then I took part in a workshop where I visited a world, all to do with showing off your mending skills. And then I travelled to a world, same one as Jade, Mushroom World. What a world it was. And what I liked about that was it was at the end of quite a dark time of all the lockdowns and everything. And it was just a bright moment in all of that darkness and all of that worry about the world. Suddenly I was doing something that was hilariously funny, but also made me really think about fashion and what it meant to me on a quite a deep level, in spite of the silliness that I was definitely doing whilst in the world. And I was so inspired by it that for the last, I think this is the third year that I've been running workshops with all of the first years across the Fashion and Textiles Institute here at Falmouth, where they take part in fashion fictions and put on a little exhibition of the things they've found in the worlds they've gone to. And they absolutely love it. It has brilliant responses, and it's a great thing for first year students to do, because it really makes them start thinking in a much more creative and critical way about the fashion system than any other activity I've found. So thank you, Amy.
Great to hear. Thank you, Julie. And that kind of the mix of the silly and the kind of moving or even kind of profound experience is something that I really came through in Mushroom World. If anyone's intrigued by Mushroom World, check out chapter 4 of the book and you will find all of the secrets. Thank you. Right, let's go to Kate.
Hello. Well, I want to talk about Mushroom World as well, but I feel like there's so many other worlds. But thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for having me as part of the project. It's been absolutely amazing. So I think I've been involved with different aspects of the project since about 2020, when we were all in lockdown and we were writing worlds online. And then I was really privileged to take part in a couple of enactments. I think a stage 2 enactment where we brought back some artifacts from, I think, World 54, which was amazing. And we did some very fun charity shop excursions and then kind of put all this stuff together. And I remember dressing up Matilda's son in toy blocks and a curtain. And then Mushroom World enactment, and this is gonna sound super gushy, but it genuinely has changed my life. And I think when we were communing with the mushrooms on a weekly basis, I just really that kind of nature-based spirituality was something that I wasn't really connected to, familiar with, and this idea that I was really the Celine Saman quote that everything we make returns to the earth as either food or poison. And that's what I was like, oh my goodness, they're these like mycelial beings that we need to feed with our clothes when they like, what are we doing with all this plastic? And honestly, it's changed my life. And I other kind of work I do in the world, I run a social enterprise and we do all sorts of things, but it's massively my experience as part of fashion fictions, and particularly Mushroom World, but other stuff has really shaped funding we've applied for, projects we've done. We now do plant stuff, which we never used to do. We run a folk herbalism program twice now. And so, that just wouldn't have happened. And my favorite thing is to tell people about it, who say, oh, when I used the Mushroom World. But honestly, and then I'm just really excited, to still be able to explore different fictional worlds. So one thing I'm part of is a fashion collective here in Norwich, and we have this sort of slightly conceptual thing called the Alternative Fashion School, which is about what if fashion education was totally different and grassroots and for normal people, and preparing us for the world that we need to be in rather than the one that we think we still are in. And we're kind of working as part of Fashion Fictions to sort of enact a fictional version of the Alternative Fashion School. So we're really looking forward to some activity over the coming few months. Some highlights. So it's something to do with spirituality and fashion. So I'm really excited to read that in the book and that chapter. And something to do with earning badges, a bit like the Girl Guides for kind of pro-social environmental fashion behaviours. So we're really looking forward to actually physically making those badges, and then people that come to our activities can earn them. So that's to look forward to.
Amazing. Thank you, Kate. I want to know more about that, and I will do. I'm looking forward to that. So thank you. It's just so great to hear from the people who have taken part, because the one thing I can say is I haven't really taken part in Fashion Fictions. I wrote a few worlds, but I'm a kind of an observer of the people who are really going deep into these fictions. So great to hear from you. Right, I'll just share a few more bits from the book. Let's go back to my slides. So one thing to say, hopefully that's coming up. What I'm wanting to flag up here is the fact that, as Kate has indicated, Fashion Fictions is still ongoing as a very active project. So it's been a bit of an interesting thing kind of doing the book, which analysing all of this material and these ideas that have been generated, that obviously feels like somewhat kind of retrospective experience, but people are still continuing and generating things and enacting, bringing worlds to life in different ways all the time. And I try to encourage that and kind of support that through the stuff that's in the book. So kind of built within the chapters are instructions for each of the stages. So stage 1, writing, stage 2, prototyping, stage 3, enacting. There are also what I think of as kind of recipes for having a go at the enactments, the 4 enactments that we ran as part of the research. So happily, here is the instructions for meeting the mushrooms that people have referred to, with the idea that, you know, every set of instructions can be adapted and kind of remixed to suit the context that you find yourself in. And there's also instructions for an activity that I describe as a kind of reflective activity that I describe as a wonder capture activity. One of the key concepts that I came across when I was developing the project is the idea of wonder as a kind of experience of seeing the world as if through fresh eyes. And that seemed to really resonate with the lots of the comments that people were making or kind of share at the end of a workshop. And so it kind of really helped me to think about designing an activity that could be used at the end of a fashion fictions writing, prototyping, enactment activity to try and kind of capture the participants' thinking at that point, that they're in a funny kind of in-between zone between the fictional world, which does really come to feel quite real, and the kind of transition back to the real world. So that's in there too. And the other thing that I really wanted to flag up, let me find my place, is something that appears at the end of each of those 4 themed chapters, so the 4 kind of core chapters of the book, as what I've called ideas for the real world. So these are kind of ideas, questions that have arisen for me from the themes, from each of these themes that I've explored, from the fictional ideas of the participants and the kind of theoretical material that I have then been guided to. And I tried to really pull these out and encapsulate them as questions, ideas that could be picked up and carried forward and explored. And I feel like each one of these could be a lifetime's work. Each one of these could inspire a new project that could really go deep. And I tried to, I guess, kind of pull out questions and directions that felt fresh to me as someone who's been active in the area of fashion and sustainability for a long time. So I'm kind of placing them there in the hope that people might find things that they want to pick up and run with. So the book's really sort of an opening up rather than a finishing off. So let's hear from a few more participants. As I say, these are my questions that have kind of arisen from the work that I've been doing, the writing I've done, from the wonderful explorations and inventions of all the people who've taken part. But each person, as we've already heard, each participant kind of has their own perspectives, questions, ideas that they want to explore further. So let's hear from 3 more people, and we're going to hand over now. I think I'm going to hand over to Bella. Bella, are you here?
I am. Can you see me and hear me? Had some internet problems, but
yes, I can back with both of those things. You are here.
Thank you for inviting me to reflect on my participation. I've been an FFP, a fashion fictions participant. It's been 5 years of fun. It's definitely the best cult I've ever joined, and I've joined a few, but this is my favourite. There's not a lot of laughs in the climate crisis, but it's been it's been a lot of fun, and I've been really inspired by the optimism that the exercises you've designed and encouraged us to design have prompted. So it's been, it's rare to feel positivity about some of these major problems, and Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed myself writing worlds. So I wrote a world or two. I wrote a world where I imagined a Nobel Peace Prize for textile resourcefulness, and I fleshed out some worlds with some other colleagues and new friends, and imagined a kind of clothing speakeasy in a world where dressing up is outlawed, and that was fun. Became a kind of temporary sort of nightclub owner, and ran this kind of illegal clothing speakeasy. But again, I'm going to Mushroom World because Mushroom World was the one that really took me by surprise. And Mushroom World is the one that I'm amused to see that has ended up with some of my contributions in the book. So I was lucky enough on one of the trips to meet the mushrooms, actually finding some, and I dressed in some sort of fly agaric footwear, and I managed to find some mushrooms and pay homage to them. But many of the times I couldn't find mushrooms. So what I was doing was kind of reflecting on where mushrooms might be and where mushrooms might not be. And one of the most stimulating and surprising encounters I had with mushrooms was finding some fungal blooms, some mold growing on a restaurant wall, and starting to think about what fashion might learn from mold, which was something that is not somewhere I ever predicted that I would be going. So I was thinking about how we try and kind of manage and maintain the damp world in which we live, the kind of dry, clean, bleaching, primping, pruning, and managing type strategies that we might bring to kind of keep fungus and mold at bay from our bodies and our homes. And it was both a way to kind of feel the threat of the environment, and also, you know, the promise of what might happen if we think differently about the world in which we live. So I found myself endlessly surprised by the places that the project took me, and that's its great benefit, I think, to us and to the whole sector and world indeed, is, you know, those ideas that engage us and refresh us and surprise us. We're kind of coming up with new solutions without realizing that we're doing it, because we're just dressing up and having a laugh. So thank you very much, Amy, and congratulations on the book.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bella. Okay, let's hand over to Wendy.
Hiya, thanks, Amy. Well, yeah, I've also been lucky to take part in, I think, most stages of fashion fictions. I wrote a world. I've taken part in a prototyping session where we travelled into a world that someone else had imagined, and then we created an artifact to bring back with us to show other people. And then I've also taken part in a kind of physical enactment as well. I think I'd just like to kind of back up a point that Bella made in what she said about how positive the whole project has been, and the sort of experience of taking part in it. And like Bella said, working on sustainability and fashion, which I'm doing as well, kind of doing a PhD in that area, it can, yeah, you can sometimes get quite bogged down in kind of how depressing things are and how slow the change is, as like Kate was saying earlier. And taking part in fashion fictions just felt like this opportunity and this invitation to just kind of leave all that negativity aside, which was really refreshing and I really enjoyed. What else? Yeah, I feel like like at every stage, it was bringing creativity back into fashion. And on the positivity side of it, that feels like something that's really been missing in fashion in the last few years. So that was really lovely to be involved in, and to show that it's possible. You know, it can be a creative thing again. And yeah, the enactment that I took part in, the stage 3 enactment, I think it was World 27, and I think we kept referring to it as the one in the woods, but I don't know if it's called that in the actual book. But yeah, so I didn't go to Mushroom World, but I did go to the woods. And this was a place where we documented stories about our garments, and then there was a special day of the year where everyone went into the woods and shared the stories about their garments, and people could swap garments, and the sort of value of these garments was linked to the stories that people told about them. And I absolutely loved that world, and I so wanted to stay there, and I had such a wonderful day. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much every stage, but that stage in particular and that enactment has also had quite an impact on my work and my research. It's sort of reminded me that you can push up boundaries, and it's okay to kind of ask participants to do things that maybe initially you might think, oh, that's a bit weird. Are people really going to understand what I'm getting at here? But yeah, I've tried things and people have run with it, and it feels like it's given me permission to try things like that, and it's been hugely inspiring. So thank you, and congratulations on such a brilliant legacy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wendy. Yes, the one in the woods was very special. You can find that in chapter 3 and chapter something else. I've forgotten now. In another chapter, use the world index and you will locate the pages on which it appears. Okay, and last but by no means least, let's see if we can hear from Talia. Talia, are you here?
Yes, hello. It's difficult to go last because everyone has made such wonderful points. I agree with Wendy entirely about the positivity and bringing creativity back into fashion. And like everyone else, like I think of Mushroom World often when I'm out and about and, you know, in the woods spotting different mushrooms. Maybe I can talk about one of the worlds that I wrote that later became an enactment that I took part in because we haven't mentioned it, which was a text-based world. I think someone did mention some things getting posted around, which became the enactment, which is not what I had in mind at all at the beginning when I wrote the world. And so it kind of went through this process where it went off in a entirely different direction from what I originally thought that this was all happening on teletext. But then it ended up going in a completely different direction to what I'd, you know, as more people kind of added their ideas and it kind of took different forms and shapes. And I think for me, that was one of the, you know, when you talk about the positivity and the creativity, it's you know, this combination of other people, right, bringing their positivity and creativity and imagination and ideas, and you know, creating all of these worlds was something that we all did together, right? And it was something that it was like a joint creative endeavor that we all made happen. And it is incredibly inspiring. And it's also, I mean, for me, kind of depressing because we create our world in their boring, our boring, depressing, sad world that we actually live in every day. And actually we don't have to keep recreating the world that we live in. We can do something else. And we can try other things, and we can take things in other directions. And I think it was incredibly heartening because I think for a lot of us, you know, when you are, as Wendy sort of mentioned, you know, working in this space, and as Amy mentioned, you know, you hear a lot about what won't work and things that won't work and what you can't do because it's against our norms that we've all come to accept by living in the world and seeing how it works and then accepting that that's the way things are and should be. But we don't have to accept that. And, you know, if we want to make a better world, we can't.
Wonderful. Thank you, Talia. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share just a few more things to finish off, which again is kind of oriented towards action and what we can do, which I think continues from those great sentiments. Am I in the right place? Let's have a look. I was there. Okay, so yeah, just to finish off, I'm going to say a bit about chapter 7, where I wrestle with the important question of what all of this is for, which is a question that I had all along. I mean, the project was kind of driven by a hunch, like maybe it could be worth us like playing around and playing with alternative possibilities and creating a space where we can think how we would like things to be. But I was always really conscious of the danger that maybe this activity is just a nice holiday from the problems of the real world that does nothing to address those problems, or even worse, kind of acts as a release valve for the the frustrations and the concerns that we have. I did entertain those thoughts. I don't think that's the case, and I think that the reflections that we've heard, I guess, kind of give me confidence that it's not. But I wanted to make some space in the book to think about how this kind of speculative work, which is about stepping into fictional, impossible kind of parallel worlds, like how can this actually be useful? So I came to the idea of the kind of three routes, three ripples of change, I think I described them as. So one of them was about shifting our individual and collective sense of possibility, kind of shifting, expanding that sense of what might be possible, that feels really important. So I guess I see this kind of project as it's kind of laying the groundwork for change. It's about exercising the muscle of imagination and expanding our sense of possibility. I think there's so much more that we need to do in that kind of direction. The second ripple is about injecting new stories into the world and creating kind of new kind of reference points that we can point to. I mean, you've heard these references to Mushroom World and the kind of people's experiences there, and I think that's because the story of stepping into a world where mushrooms are hailed as the spiritual guides of the world and therefore kind of at the center of society and culture. It's a story that we can connect with and that some people have kind of experienced, that trying to bring that to life. And it's almost like a marker in the ground or something that you can kind of you can connect to it, and it then maybe allows new conversations to occur. And I mean, there's great work going on in the importance of narrative change and the role of narratives as being this kind of thing that sits underneath all of the action on the top. The stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and what we do are so powerful. So I definitely see a role for these things which are intentionally playful, and there's a lot of kind of silliness as Julie mentioned, but there's truth in there as well, and there's real kind of real value in there. So those are the two kind of, I guess, kind of more indirect ripples. But then in the third, the kind of the closing section of the book, I dealt with what I saw as a third ripple. And I found myself proposing a way that we could use fashion fictions to support something that is kind of more active and more direct. And I call this playing fashion fictions in prefigurative mode. So drawing on kind of literature about prefiguration and trying to make things happen in the real world. Oh, I'm getting some tinkling from someone. I wonder, Sally, if you could find who that is to do a meet. So playing in prefigurative mode, trying to make things happen in the real world, the thing that you would want to make happen in your dreams. And this is pretty much what we do in the enactments, as you've heard. But I guess the thing for me about shifting into this prefigurative mode kind of thinking was about really trying to kind of extending that over a longer period of time, trying to bring a fiction to life over a longer period of time and grounded in a particular place. So really intentionally kind of playing with that distinction between fiction and reality. So the proposal for this kind of playing in prefigurative mode is to imagine a parallel world version of an organization or a practice that's rooted in a particular place. So the picture that's on the left here relates to one example, kind of the first activity that I've done that explored this, where we imagined a parallel world version of the place that I work, Nottingham School of Art and Design. We had a great experience of reinventing the institution and its history. So we created a fictional timeline to explain the history of this institution, which in the fiction was rooted in Nottingham's radical history of radical thought and action, and thought about how that would come to life over time. So in this kind of mode of action, I guess the idea I have is that the way that I feel is that I can use a fiction to give my ideas more ambition. I kind of always do this movement of kind of using the fiction like a bit of a cloak, where I can kind of sneak about and I can do more. I can be more subversive than I would be able to if I wasn't using my fiction cloak. But kind of wearing the cloak, but also trying to embed these things that are doable and we can work together. As Talia said, it's, you know, all of these things, the acting collectively is absolutely key to try and bring these fictions to life. So this is something that we're working with at the moment. So myself and Sally, my colleague, who's a research fellow working on fashion fictions, we're continuing to support people who are interested in running fashion fictions activities in different settings. And at the moment, we have a particular focus. We would like to support these prefigurative kind of extended enactments in community settings. So we've had a lot of the activity that's taken place has been in universities, which is fantastic, amazing to see it embedded in so many educational institutions around the world. We're really excited about what can happen if these ideas are kind of embedded and explored outside formal education and embedded in community settings. So we're looking for groups who might be interested in working with this idea, kind of coming up with the idea, a fiction of a fictional organisation or practice, and bringing it to life over a period of some months. And Kate earlier, who mentioned working in this way with the Alternative Fashion School in Norwich, and we're really, it's really great to see the principle that I kind of found myself inventing as I was writing chapter 7. I didn't know I was going to come up with a new mode for fashion fictions, but it presented itself to me. So if anyone is interested in kind of exploring that, you could email Sally and we have some information we can share with you. So Sally will stick that in the chat so you have her contact details, or you can just reply to the email that you got signing up to this event, and I will be happy to hear from you. There's more that I could say about lots of things, but I'm going to stop so that we can have time for chat and questions after this kind of recorded part. I will just give a little plug to another launch. This is the in-person instalment. So we're at the launch part 1 here online together. I couldn't resist the thought of having an in-person version, which will take place in January at Mammoth, a Climate Action Cinema in Nottingham, a real little gem of our city. So I'll be in conversation with somebody talking about the book. We'll show a couple of short films. So one is from The One in the Woods, the exchange of garments in the woods, World 27. And the other one is a wonderful dressing up activity that some of the people here took part in, which is World 54. And kind of in keeping with this idea that this project is still alive, it's not a kind of retrospective thing. There will also be an opportunity to remix existing worlds to create your own vision of your own desirable parallel world. the cinema, which is now Mammoth, was once in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the smallest cinema in the world. So there are a limited number of seats. I will just flag that up. Sally will put the link in the chat for us. So if you would like to come along, it would be very nice to do an in-person version of this. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And I think that takes us to the end of the more structured part of the event. I'll stop recording in a moment, but I'd like to thank the speakers. Thank you for coming along and sharing your experiences and reflections. It's been wonderful to hear from you, and absolutely appropriate for a project. Yes, I designed the project. I organised the events that I've run. I wrote the book. But I really couldn't have done it without all of the wonderful ideas and explorations of so many people. So a big thank you to everyone who's been involved and has supported the project. Yeah, let's stop there. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to hit stop on the recording function. Thank you.